more on this. Mark Meirowitz joins us from New York. He's a lawyer and professor at State University of New York. Professor, always good to speak to you. So your reaction to this ruling?
Well, the first thing to make very clear is that the Supreme Court did not decide whether or not the birthright citizenship can be changed by the president's order. What birthright citizenship says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. What Trump's executive order basically said is that the children of undocumented immigrants are not entitled to such automatic citizenship by virtue of what we call jus soli, by virtue of being born on the land. However, this decision did not involve the merits of whether that's correct, whether the president could make that change in the Constitution. What it said was, and in fact, the Supreme Court, and this was made clear by Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Supreme Court is going to look at that issue in October when it begins its term. Or maybe today, if it's still in session, it might issue that decision. I'm pretty sure they won't, because it's such a even bigger decision to amend the Constitution in effect. What they really said is that local federal judges cannot issue injunctions with national scope. They can only issue orders that are limited to their area of jurisdiction. Let's say the federal court in Oregon can issue an injunction for the district in Oregon, but they can't issue a universal order. What this means in practice is that the executive order that President Trump issued about citizenship and immigrants will, in effect, after 30 days, go into effect. So it's pretty monumental all around. But the thing is that the takeaway is that the local judges around the country, concentrated in a number of federal districts, have basically been stopping President Trump on many of his executive orders and made them national in scope, which really cut back on the president's power. And the president says, well, the judges don't have that much power. So it's really a toss and pull between the different branches, the judiciary branch and the presidential office.
Professor, this ruling, does this now mean that, okay, President Trump can go ahead with some of his executive orders, they can be implemented, but also future presidents, their executive orders would have to be the same? So if the next president came into power and said they want to reverse many of what Trump's policies are, this ruling would now stand?
Right, but most importantly, the question is, if someone is challenging a presidential order, they'd have to go to various local districts and challenge them, but they couldn't just go to one federal judge and say, give me an order for the entire country. They can't do that. And that's exactly what's been happening. In fact, that has happened with previous presidents. So you're right. If this ruling stays, and it looks like it's the Supreme Court is the law, I'm a lawyer, that's the highest court in the land, that future presidents would be bound by the idea that local federal district courts will have their power curtailed in terms of being able to do these universal national injunctions and orders. So that's a very, very serious implication for the balance of power between the president and the courts. So yes, it affects future presidents. It also reflects back, and it doesn't really change anything, I think, retroactively, but it says to the president now, the president's coming up, as you correctly point out, that the local judges will not be able to stop you cold by making a national universal order and stop whatever it is you want to do. About birthright citizenship, though, that's not being decided in the merit today.
Yes, and as you say, that's even bigger because that comes down to the U.S. Constitution and what's in it. But it also then just gives so much more power to the president, which many politicians have also been debating, considering what we saw with Iran, them saying that Trump went unilaterally and decided on these strikes against Iran, and he didn't go through Congress, although previous presidents like President Bush and Obama did the exact same thing. But I'm also wondering, within the Supreme Court itself, writing in dissent of the opinion was Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and she said the decision is I'm quoting her here, an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, on the war powers, that's a different issue. That's a push and pull between the Congress and the president, and whether or not the president's commander-in-chief has enough power to begin hostilities, or whether he has to go to Congress. And as you correctly point out, no president previously has ever gone to Congress to ask for permission under the War Powers Act to go and launch hostilities. And as you see, Obama, Bush, you name it, have done all sorts of things militarily without asking for Congress's permission. They reported to Congress, they told them about it, but didn't say we're subject to it. Now, in Sotomayor's dissent, there are 3 liberal judges. There are 6 conservative judges. And the dissent reflects the view of liberals who believe that this power of judges to check the presidential power is something that is needed in a democracy. But the thing is that the Supreme Court consists of 9 judges, and the majority is 6 conservatives right now. And the 6 conservatives have held, with some concurring opinions that say why they agree and which points they agree on. But in essence, I think the court is saying that the local courts have gone too far and extended their jurisdiction and power too far. And at the same time, as you point out, this is definitely something that extends executive power. Now, the balance between the branches goes back and forth. As you said, the war powers, Congress and the president. The injunctions, the courts and the president. And this is the American Constitution. It is structured in a way to have checks and balances and separation of powers. And we're seeing this unfold right before our eyes.
We certainly are, Professor Mark Meirowitz. Always good to get your take. Thank you, as always, for your time.
Thank you, and very nice to be with you.